Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm very glad you're here. I was just about to have a drink, and I would love for you to join me. Or if you don't want to drink, I would still love for you to join me. Just hang out, have a good time, enjoy some company. So yeah, come, let's drink. Or not. But yeah, bring what you got, of course. I've got this malt beverage. Never had it before. It's brewed in St. Louis, Missouri, so kind of eager to see what this is like. So yeah. Cheers to you. And Jesus too. Smooth. Not bad. I'm gonna have another one. Yeah, I dig it. Nice color too. Anyway, wanted to share something with you all. Kind of been thinking a lot about things, the way society is going and progressing, and just stuff that I'm seeing on the internet and actually around me. It's starting to kind of creep into daily life, it seems. So kind of reminded me of something that I read in a book a long time ago, and it happens to be one of my favorite books, which is George Orwell's 1984. And you'll see where I'm going with this in a bit. But just a short little section. And kind of troubling, honestly. But just kind of the idea of language and speaking and words. And it's really interesting. So if you don't mind, you stick around. Like I said, it's not too long. Just a short little excerpt. But it's from chapter 5 of book 1. I think, yeah, book 1. And for those of you who aren't aware, 1984 dystopian novel. George Orwell, I forgot his real name. Somebody help me out. But he was originally a socialist, and he fought in Spain on the side of the socialists. But the more he dealt with them, the more the mask came off, the more the honeymoon phase ended, right? He began to see what it was really about, what these people were like, and inside, what kind of people they truly were and what they were trying to accomplish and the methods they used, and they were horrible. I mean, there's just no sugarcoating it. They were terrible people doing terrible things, and that's what inspired George Orwell to write 1984. And a lot of the stuff he saw with his own eyes, he put in the book. So it's really interesting. So even though the book is fiction, there's quite a bit of truth in it. So anyway, Winston, the main character, lives in this dystopian England and all sorts of dystopian stuff. And in this chapter, he's at work talking with one of his coworkers. And it's a really interesting conversation. And I just wanted to share it with you guys. So without further ado, the chapter goes like this. In the low-ceilinged canteen, deep underground, the lunch queue jerked slowly forward. The room was already full and deafeningly noisy. From the grill at the counter, the steam of stew came pouring forth, with a sour metallic smell, which did not quite overcome the fumes of Victory gin. On the far side of the room there was a small bar, a mere hole in the wall, where gin could be bought at 10 cents the large nip. "Just the man I was looking for," said a voice at Winston's back. He turned around. It was his friend, Syme, who worked in the research department. Perhaps friend was not exactly the right word. You did not have friends nowadays. You had comrades. But there were some comrades whose society was pleasanter than that of others. Syme was a philologist, a specialist in newspeak. Indeed, he was one of the enormous team of experts now engaged in compiling the 11th edition of the Newspeak Dictionary. He was a tiny creature, smaller than Winston, with dark hair and large protuberant eyes, at once mournful and derisive, which seemed to search your face closely while he was speaking to you. "I wanted to ask you whether you'd got any razor blades," he said. "Not one," said Winston, with a sort of guilty haste. "I've tried all over the place. They don't exist any longer." Everyone kept asking you for razor blades. Actually, he had 2 unused ones, which he was hoarding up. There had been a famine of them for months past. At any given moment, there was some necessary article which the party shops were unable to supply. Sometimes it was buttons, sometimes it was darning wool, sometimes it was shoelaces. At present, it was razor blades. You could only get hold of them, if at all, by scrounging more or less furtively on the quote-unquote free market. "I've been using the same blade for 6 weeks, he added, untruthfully. The queue gave another jerk forward. As they halted, he turned and faced Syme again. Each of them took a greasy metal tray from a pile at the edge of the counter. "Did you go and see the prisoners hanged yesterday?" said Syme. "I was working," said Winston indifferently. "I shall see it on the flicks, I suppose." "A very inadequate substitute," said Syme. His mocking eyes roved over Winston's face. "I know you," the eyes seemed to say. "I see through you. I know very well why you didn't go to see those prisoners hanged." In an intellectual way, Syme was venomously orthodox. He would talk with a disagreeable, gloating satisfaction of helicopter raids on enemy villages, the trial and confessions of thought criminals, the executions in the cellars of the Ministry of Love. Talking to him was largely a matter of getting him away from such subjects and entangling him, if possible, in the technicalities of newspeak, on which he was authoritative and interesting. Winston turned his head a little aside to avoid the scrutiny of the large dark eyes. "It was a good hanging," said Syme reminiscently. "I think it spoils it when they tie their feet together. I like to see them kicking, and above all, at the end, the tongue sticking right out, and blue, a quite bright blue. That's the detail that appeals to me." "Next, please," yelled the white-aproned prole with the ladle. Winston and Syme pushed their trays beneath the grill. Onto each was dumped swiftly the regulation lunch: metal pannikin of pinkish-gray stew, a hunk of bread, a cube of cheese, a mug of milkless Victory coffee, and 1 saccharine tablet. "There's a table over there, under that telescreen," said Syme. "Let's pick up a gin on the way." The gin was served out to them in handleless china mugs. They threaded their way across the crowded room and unpacked their trays onto the metal-topped table, on one corner of which someone had left a pool of stew, a filthy liquid mess that had the appearance of vomit. Winston took up his mug of gin, paused for an instant to collect his nerve, and gulped the oily-tasting stuff down. When he had winked the tears out of his eyes, he suddenly discovered that he was hungry. He began swallowing spoonfuls of the stew, which, in among its general sloppiness, had cubes of spongy, pinkish stuff, which was probably a preparation of meat. Neither of them spoke again till they had emptied their pannikins. From the table at Winston's left, a little behind his back, someone was talking rapidly and continuously, a harsh gabble, almost like the quacking of a duck, which pierced the general uproar of the room. "How is the dictionary getting on?" said Winston, raising his voice to overcome the noise. "Slowly," said Syme. "I'm on the adjectives. It's fascinating." He had brightened up immediately at the mention of newspeak. He pushed his pannikin aside, took up his hunk of bread in one delicate hand and his cheese in the other, and leaned across the table so as to be able to speak without shouting. "The 11th edition is the definitive edition," he said. "We're getting the language into its final shape, the shape it's going to have when nobody speaks anything else. When we've finished with it, people like you will have to learn it all over again. You think, I dare say, that our chief job is inventing new words, but not a bit of it. We're destroying words, scores of them, hundreds of them, every day. We're cutting the language down to the bone. In the 11th edition won't contain a single word that will become obsolete before the year 2050. He bit hungrily into his bread and swallowed a couple mouthfuls, then continued speaking with a sort of pedant's passion. His thin, dark face had become animated, his eyes had lost their mocking expression, and grown almost dreamy. It's a beautiful thing, the destruction of words. Of course, the great wastage is in the verbs and adjectives, but there are hundreds of nouns that can be got rid of as well. It isn't only the synonyms, there are also the antonyms. After all, what justification is there for a word which is simply the opposite of some other words? A word contains its opposite in itself. Take good, for instance. If you have a word like good, what need is there for a word like bad? Ungood will do just as well. Better, because it's an exact opposite, which the other is not. Or again, if you want a stronger version of good, what sense is there in having a whole string of vague, useless words, like excellent and splendid, and all the rest of them? Plus good covers the meaning, or double plus good, if you want something stronger still. Of course, we use those forms already, but in the final version of Newspeak, there'll be nothing else. In the end, the whole notion of goodness and badness will be covered by only 6 words. In reality, only 1 word. Don't you see the beauty of that, Winston? It was BB, Big Brother's idea originally, of course, he added as an afterthought. A sort of vapid eagerness flitted across Winston's face at the mention of Big Brother. Nevertheless, Syme immediately detected a certain lack of enthusiasm. "You haven't a real appreciation of Newspeak, Winston," he said almost sadly. "Even when you write it, you're still thinking in old speak. I've read some of those pieces that you write in the Times occasionally. They're good enough, but they're translations. In your heart, you'd prefer to stick to old speak, with all its vagueness and useless shades of meaning. You don't grasp the beauty of the destruction of words. Do you know that Newspeak is the only language in the world whose vocabulary gets smaller every year?" Winston did know that, of course. He smiled sympathetically. He hoped, not trusting himself to speak. Syme bit off another fragment of the dark-colored bread, chewed it briefly, and went on. "Don't you see that the whole aim of Newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible, because there will be no words in which to express it. Every concept that can ever be needed will be expressed by exactly 1 word, with its meaning rigidly defined, and all its subsidiary meanings rubbed out and forgotten. Already in the 11th edition, we're not far from that point, but the process will still be continuing long after you and I are dead. Every year, fewer and fewer words, and the range of consciousness always a little smaller. Even now, of course, there's no reason or excuse for committing thought crime. It's merely a question of self-discipline, reality control. But in the end, there won't be any need even for that. The revolution will be complete when the language is perfect. Newspeak is Ingsoc, and Ingsoc is Newspeak," he added with a sort of mystical satisfaction. "Has it ever occurred to you, Winston, that by the year 2050, at the very latest, not a single human being will be alive who could understand such a conversation as we are having now? Except," began Winston doubtfully, and then stopped. It had been on the tip of his tongue to say, "except the proles," but he checked himself, not feeling fully certain that this remark was not in some way unorthodox. Syme, however, had divined what he was about to say. "The proles are not human beings," he said carelessly. "By 2050, earlier, probably, all real knowledge of old speak will have disappeared. The whole literature of the past will have been destroyed. Chaucer, Shakespeare, Milton, Byron. They'll exist only in Newspeak versions. Not merely changed into something different, but actually changed into something contradictory of what they used to be. Even the literature of the party will change. Even the slogans will change. How could you have a slogan like 'freedom is slavery' when the concept of freedom has been abolished? The whole climate of thought will be different. In fact, there will be no thought as we understand it now. Orthodoxy means not thinking, not needing to think. Orthodoxy is unconsciousness." One of these days, thought Winston, with sudden deep conviction, Syme will be vaporized. He's too intelligent. He sees too clearly and speaks too plainly. The party does not like such people. One day he will disappear. It is written in his face. The destruction of words is a beautiful thing. The goal, right, of the party in 1984 was to control your very thoughts, and they had a word. It was called thought crime. And this guy Syme's job, as you gather from the story, was to eliminate words. And the idea is, if you eliminate words, they won't be able to make thoughts with the words, and you'll eliminate thought crime because they won't have the words they need for the thoughts, which is terrifying. It's a terrifying thought if you think about it. And another thing I thought was interesting is Shakespeare, Milton, Byron, they'll exist, but they'll be changed into something different, something contradictory of what they used to be. And I would encourage you to look around today, and I challenge you. That seems to be what's happening now, right? Words, phrases, things that used to have one meaning are being changed to another. And it's weird and sad. But like I said, Orwell, he dealt with socialists. He saw their tactics. So there is a bit of truth in this fiction. And when I look around and I see socialists and people on the left, it seems that they're still using the same tactics. Well, similar anyway. Granted, they're not removing words from the dictionary. They're not eliminating... Yeah, they're not eliminating the dictionary yet. Yet. But their goal clearly still is controlling us. Controlling our thoughts. Controlling our words. And even though they're not removing words from the dictionary, they found a new tactic which actually seems to be frighteningly effective. And I'm shocked at how effective it's been. You see the word, they use one word, and to control everything that I see anyway. And that word is offensive. Think about it. You don't like that speech, you don't like what people are saying, it's offensive. You don't agree with it, it's offensive. I don't like it, it's offensive. And not only that, it's just name-calling, right? I don't like what you're saying. Oh, you're an ist, you're a phobe. And you got to follow the logic here. Speech control is thought control. It's control of you, your thoughts, your body, your mind. You know, words have power. Only if you give them power, of course. But, you know, and they're using this term offensive, right? Maybe I want to say that. And you say it's offensive. Well, so? That's your problem, right? Maybe you need to look inside yourself and find out why you're so offended, you know? I mean, when I was a kid, they used to say sticks and stones. You know, we had a little emotional fortitude, right? A little strength in ourselves, you know, to not be offended at these things. But for some odd reason now, being offended is the worst thing in the world. And being called an ist or a phobe is just outrageous. It's just, oh, it's the end of the world. And I don't know how this happened, but it's working. And today I'd just like to call that out. I'd like to do something about it. Don't let them do it to you. And I see so many people on the internet or even in real life, you know, somebody calls them a name, one name. They say, hey, that's ist, right? And then the person, oh, back down, apologize, you know, I didn't mean to offend. Why? Why are you backing down? Don't do that. If they're offended, that's on them, not you. Right? They're trying to control you, just like this. They're trying to police your language, right? If they can control the words you use, oh, it's offensive, right? They can control your thoughts, and they can control you. It's tyranny in its most rawest form, if you think about it, controlling your speech. And once again, I've said this before, how are we going to arrive at truth if people are too afraid to speak it? If people are so afraid of offending other people or being called a name, how are people going to speak the truth? I mean, turning to the Bible, was Jesus afraid to offend people? Heck no, right? Our own country, the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Madison, were they afraid of offending people? No. In fact, they shot people. Just gonna throw that out there. No, they weren't afraid to offend people. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, all that was a big F you slap in the face to the British, We're not afraid of you. We're not afraid if you're offended. We're going to do what we're going to do. And they made a great country. Granted, it wasn't a perfect country, but I believe in this country. And I believe what it stands for. And that offends some people right now, what I just said. But guess what? Problem's not me. It's you. And instead of calling me a name, why don't you tell me why I'm wrong, Debate, speech, it's important. We're never going to arrive at the truth if we're afraid. I mean, the civil rights movement, were those people afraid of offending people? They offended a lot of people. Were they afraid? Did they back down? No, they didn't. And that's why I want to encourage you, on the side of liberty and freedom. Don't be afraid. Don't back down. Don't let them control the narrative. Don't let them use this one word. Offensive. Don't let them use it against you. Because when they do, you're letting them win. You're letting tyranny, dystopia, take over. They warned us. George Orwell, all these dystopian novels, there's dozens of them. They warned us because they saw it. And it's happening. All you have to do is read it for yourself. Or, watch my show. But, it's real. This is real tyranny. And people are going to say that's ridiculous, that's outrageous. No, it's not. Believe me. Believe Orwell. He was there. He saw it. There were Russians who lived in the USSR. There were people who lived in China under Mao. They wrote about it. They fled and talked about it. Horrible things happened. Just absolutely terrifying, sickening things happen when tyranny takes root in your society. And it starts with little stuff like this. Controlling your speech. And I really want to stress, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. Okay, just to change from when I was a kid to now, I don't even recognize my surroundings anymore. I don't recognize the people. It's shocking. And nobody's happy, by the way. I look around, nobody's happy anymore. When I was a kid, you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody, depressed or, angsty and all that. They're everywhere now. It's not good. It's not good for the human soul to be like this, to suppress our wants and desires and speech and freedom. It's unnatural. So, like I said, I just wanted to point it out, and I wanted to encourage you. Don't give in. Don't let these people win. Don't let them use these words to make you feel bad and try and control you. Don't let them do it. Okay? Let's take it back. Let's do it again. Sticks and stones. Tell everybody that. Let's bring it back. It doesn't have to be this way, right? We can choose to not allow this, I believe in freedom. I believe in truth. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that those values win the day. And I'm not going to give up. So, anyway. I will dismount the soapbox now. But I thought you might all find that interesting. Speech control is thought control. So, I guess that's the main takeaway I'd like for you all to get from that. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm curious to get your thoughts as well. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, if you could read the description on ways you can support me, or any of the show notes, they're going to be down there. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Not much else to say. I hope you have a good night. Hope you have a good weekend. I hope everything works out for you. I hope you'll reach out if you're struggling, to me or anybody, honestly. A lot of people holding it in nowadays, and It's not good, you know, talking about those depressed and angsty people earlier. I feel like friendship and kindness are values that we've lost as well. And I just want to spread that around, you know. So don't try to go it alone if you're suffering, okay? Yeah, just want to spread the love, you know. I'm just one guy, but I try. Yeah, I wish you well. I hope you have a good night. And yeah, take care, everyone. Good night.